Incremental greetings. Let's continue the Supermemo Course, the Pleasurable expansion. We have seen the A factor already. Then Fowl doesn't cover that, but there's a related metric that is the U factor. It's actually easier to understand than the A factor. So the A factor is what is prescribed. Hey, you should see this next time in this interval. Let's say 90 days. Okay. And it will increase in this manner. Gotcha. That doesn't mean that I will follow that. So if it's scheduled in 3 months, and I needed 4 months because I have more items in my outstanding queue, scheduled, I'm lagging behind, I will see this later. And that's precisely what the U factor is about. The AF stands for the A factor, and that's the U factor. The minimum will be 1. At the maximum, I don't know if there's maximum, usually it's 60, but it can go beyond if it's the first repetition. So let's go with this one. Okay, that's a good example. To simplify, I see this March 11th, then next day. And then, hey, that was scheduled because of the A factor and priorities next week, but I needed 40 days, more than a month. So the A factor will be crazy high. So that means that the prior repetition, if we go to the history, that means that the last repetition to the current interval, the difference is 6.9 times larger. So perhaps this is scheduled next. It's scheduled with an A factor of, actually, let me actually see. 6.2 is already quite high. Remember, by design, it's capped at 6.9. Even that, I may do the repetition later. So let's do something easy. I create a new item. Question and answer. I have scheduled this for tomorrow. So now the U factor, the A factor, is almost 4. In my case, in my collection, it's like that. Okay. So that means that if I repeat this, now the interval is 1 day. Let's say it is multiplied by 4, so it will be 4 days. Also depends on priorities and other things. Okay. Then instead, if it's 4 days, but I needed 8, the U factor will be 8. 8 over 1 is 8. Let's do another example so it's more illustrative. The next interval is 3 days. Okay. Then, if I take the weekend off and so on, what will happen? The next interval is scheduled for about 12 days. Let's say it's 12 days, right? It's almost 4, 3 times 3, it's about 12. But I take 2-week vacation, so I needed 30 days. So when I do the repetition, it's into 30 days. Yeah, that's more than double, right? So actually the U factor in this case it's 10. Why? Because instead of 12 over 12, let's say, so instead of 12, that would have been almost 4 times more than the previous interval, so an A factor of about 4, it's been at the same time a U factor of 10. Because what I did was after what was scheduled. The opposite is true. In Supermemo, you can do the repetition ahead of time, before it becomes a standing, before it is scheduled. So instead of 12, let's say that I do in the day number 10, 2 days ahead of time. That means that the U factor will be actually lower than the A factor, because only happened 10, it will be 2.5, more or less the default in Anki. Do you see where I'm hinting on? So why should you care about this, the U factor? Keep in mind the U factor is not present here. It's in the repetitions tab. The U factor now is 3. It's easy because it's the next interval. The prior interval, when you create anything, it's 1 day minimum. So if you divide by 1, it's itself. It's super easy to calculate. Why should you care about the U factor? Easy. Let me see my elements that I have done the repetition super late. How can I know that? Easy. I can sort for the U factor. Look at that. I have U factors of 1999 or even 2000, 1000. So that means that the repetition was scheduled for next day, actually the next day, 4 years ago, and it is still outstanding. I haven't seen this yet. And or let's say, but yeah, it's because I haven't seen this yet. So what I'm going to do now is use the filter. We will see this later. So hey, I want to filter that the list has 2 repetitions. Okay, still look at the A factors. So that means that was scheduled in a few days, 1 day or 2 days, and how many times the actual interval of today would be compared to the previous one. Remember, this example, it's scheduled in 10 days, but I needed 1000 days. Bro, that is 100 times more than the previous interval. That's the difference. The factor is the previous interval against the next interval by the algorithm. And the U factor is based on the anecdotal case. What happened? You have done it ahead of time, and usually what will happen is that you will be late. Especially with the lower priority staff that can wait. You will do repetition much later, and you can have U factors so crazy like that. But okay, are for topics, it's passive review. But that also includes items. I will see the effects that it has with items when you have a crazy U factor and so on. But I wanted to include that, because even if today it doesn't seem like that, it will be pretty useful when you have gone through this course, and after a while, when you start lagging behind your schedule, you cannot keep up. After a while, you want to know, hey, perhaps I want to do a subset, we will see this, of what I'm lagging the most, or you want actually to filter it out, or whatever. There's a lot of use cases. And it was not that hard to understand, I hope. See you in the next video.